Welcome to Fun with Annuities with your host, me, Stan the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent. Can annuities be fun? Can contractual guarantees be fun? Absolutely they can. Find out the brutal facts about annuities with no sales pitches or high-pressure nonsense. Just the brutal and factual annuity truth, which is all you need to hear. Let's have some fun with annuities, and let's have that fun start right now. Welcome to Fun with Annuities. I'm your host, Stan the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent, licensed in all 50 states. I want to welcome every single person out there on all the major podcast platforms, and also the people that are watching this on the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel. We have a very special guest today, and I'm so excited that she's on the show. Her name is Peggy Nicholson. She lives in St. Augustine, Florida. My PR team found her because she's written a book, but she's just a very unique lady, and she is very, very smart. And I'm having her on to talk about kind of life and what life looks like. And she's currently 78 and a half years old. You won't know that when you hear her talk, and when you look at her, she's vibrant. She's well-traveled, well-educated. She got her PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. She is not a client. She's just has become a friend and someone that I've talked to over the years. But I think she's going to provide very, very good insight into just her life and how that might translate to the people out there that are transitioning, into that chapter 2 of your life, which is lifestyle, maximizing every single day, finding a passion, and then going from there. I think she's going to be an ongoing consultant and guest from an insight of retirement, from an insight of trying to maximize every day. Peggy Nicholson, thank you so much, and welcome to Fun with Annuities.
Hello. Well, this is really exciting to see you in person, because as you said, I've talked to you a couple times over the years.
That's true.
And so and I've seen your picture because of your booklets and so forth, but
Right.
I have not seen you in person. But
Yeah.
and I have to tell you that my official real name is Margaret M. Nicholson. And the reason I want to say that is that's what I publish my book under. And if people are looking for, I'm hoping to publish more books. I want to make sure they know to look up Margaret Nicholson.
Right. And we'll
but I go by
link.
Peggy. For people
Yeah.
that don't know that Peggy's a nickname for Margaret, it confuses the hell out of some people.
Well, and with all of my celebrity guests that we have on, we have a permanent page on the site, theannuityman.com. I'll have the link to Peggy's site. I have a link to her book and all kinds of things that she has done. And, there's a contact portion there. If you want to reach out to her, she's fantastic, and she'd be more than happy to talk with you ongoing. I want to bring up, we were talking a couple weeks ago, preparing for this podcast, and I said, tell me some things that are happening in your life that are kind of unique right now. And you mentioned that you have a group that you kind of organize and oversee, and the group is called, I want everyone to just listen to this. This is great. The group is called the Preparing for Death Support Group, right? Is that what it is?
It is.
Okay.
And I have to tell you that I started talking about this for probably more than a year. And around St. Augustine, which is a wonderful place to retire to, I did it because I had a grandchild that was born here. But you meet a lot of great people. And finally, a couple women said, yes, I would join. There's 4 of us all together that meet consistently. And what's fascinating is I said the reason I want to do it is I want to live my daytime better. I'm not looking for death. I want to make today enjoyable by knowing that I'm going to die. And what was funny, our first time we met together, they all went around the room and they talked about what they had prepared for their funerals. And I was really surprised and sort of irritated because the focus is on today. But do you know that this has been wonderful for me? Because I've decided about being buried. I've taken some steps. And here's the funny thing, how far I've gone. I listened to your podcast the other day about money for life. what's that? What do you call it? That minimum money for life thing?
It's called the income floor.
Yes, the income floor,
Mm-hmm.
because that's why I got back in touch with you again.
Mm-hmm.
I've taught mostly in my life. I've been a mother. I've been in school for years and years. I've had different jobs, and after every job, I was on unemployment, and I've traveled a lot. And I lived in Holland for 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I lived in Germany for 6 months. And when you work at universities, the tax thing is different. So I have a very small Social Security, and I have those 403Bs and IRAs. And I have friends that don't have as much money as I do, and they seem to have more relaxed joy in life. And that was part of what I've been working on, is how to really enjoy every single day by not having to think about money anymore.
And I think that's so important. I mean, you were a late starter into college. You went to college at age 28 and then earned your PhD from University of Pennsylvania, which is pretty heady stuff. Now, the Preparing for Death support group, I'm gonna stay here a while, because you told me something that I need you to tell this story. Did you go to a cemetery and lay in the grave?
You're giving the secret away. Our next meeting is Monday night. And that's what I'm going to show them. From this Hulu show, they went to a retreat and they dug graves and laid in the cemetery.
Okay.
One of our things was that somebody was arranging for us to visit a funeral home. And my thing that I have planned for them on Monday is, in terms of that floor where you were talking about the pill and the lifetime care
income. Yeah. And
all of a sudden I thought, well, my mother did live at home until she died, and she was able to do that because I lived next door. And I thought, you know what, as long as my brain is working and so forth, she just had trouble preparing meals and taking care of certain things. I'm taking them to a independent assisted living facility tomorrow, or on Monday, to look to see what is that fee. Because one of the ways that I think I should plan is, what would you need? Mm-hmm. But it's true. If they hear this ahead of time, they won't. They'll find out.
They won't.
But if you lay in a cemetery or like a shallow grave and think, okay, what do I really wish that I had done? Or what do I really wish my last words were with a person? Or what am I really going to be sorry that I didn't do something? And since this group started, I have to tell you, even though I have goals, I'm enjoying every day. What I do every day with my writing, every day, I'm not spending that day looking for tomorrow. I obviously make appointments and stuff, but I'm trying to focus on, this could be my last day.
I just think that's so refreshing. I always tell people that there's no U-Hauls behind hearses, which means that you can't take it with you. And I think you've taken it to an interesting step. And I'm trying to envision, as you were talking about laying in an actual shallow grave, just laying there and trying to calm down and trying to process thoughts and think and reflect and plan. Yes, that's an extreme way to do it. But I think people could literally do that in a virtual sense, whether they're sitting on the couch or whatever, and envision themselves laying in that grave. And like you're saying, think about things. What are going to be your last words? You know, what's the legacy, not money? What's the legacy that you're going to leave to your friends, your family, the world? What's the bucket list that you have in your head or have written down that you need to check off? Because I don't know about you, Peggy, but during the last 2 years with COVID, if that wasn't a wake-up call, it should have been. Have you, with your friends in your age group, and once again, I know you're not going to believe that she's 78 and a half years old. Is that coming up more and more, people talking about the fragility of life?
What a lot of people, that my friends, some of us said we really liked the shutdown because of the things we got done. Now, the people that felt that were lucky. Like in the very beginning, I was really careful around my daughter who lives 8 minutes away, and my son-in-law and my grandson.
Right.
But technically, I didn't have to be excluded from family. And because of traveling and where I've lived, a lot of my friends are long distance. So the telephone, I got to talk to friends in the same way I would have during COVID. So a lot of people, when you retire, I'm telling you, you'll be busier than you ever were when you work. So a lot of my friends like the shutdown in the sense that, like, I finally went through all my clothes. I mean, this is not something probably you should say in public, but I took all my underpants out and laid them on the bed. And I had 84 pairs of underpants.
That's a little obsessive.
It is slacks, shirts. And I found a place, a high school here this high school does clothing design. And I could donate, because of COVID, shelters didn't want your clothes, but I could take the clothes to this high school, and the students can learn how clothes are made, take them apart and put them into, they always use denim for clothes. So people I knew really did unusual things during COVID. They read more and so forth. But now we are really starting to be out and about again. A friend's coming in from Gainesville tomorrow night.
Sure.
And Friday night I'm going to a play.
So you're busy. I had a question I'd written down for you, and it's something that my wife and I were driving the other day, and we're both from lower middle class America. We grew up without money. She grew up in Nebraska. I grew up in rural North Carolina, and none of our parents were investment people. They didn't have stocks or anything like that, which is kind of the reason I'm sitting here. It kind of led me there. But we were discussing that lower middle class America has scars from money. In fact, money, I always say money can be a disease. I'll give you an example. My mom, 82 years old, 83, she's got enough money to spend, and I showed her that she could spend $200 a day every single day for the rest of her life if she lives to 100. And if she didn't spend that $200 a day, it would roll to the next day. So she'd have to spend, if she didn't spend any today, she'd have to spend $400 tomorrow. But to this day, she pinches pennies and she worries about money, and she worries about, I understand the scars from the Depression era, but I do think that money can be a disease to where you can't free yourself enough to enjoy it. Can you comment on that?
That's funny. But one of my desk support people, they actually told me, because we do it like a potluck too. So we eat and we drink and we talk.
You got a desk support potluck. That's
well, when we meet at 5:00, but now that the weather, it's lighter, we're meeting at 5:30, and everybody brings food, and of course we have wine, and we go around, because we always make goals of what we're going to do, and then we go around, and we're proud of all the goals we end up not achieving. But I went to breakfast with one of the women, Diana, in the group. And I'm looking at the menu, and I said, this is ridiculous. I just looked at the waffles, and it looked really good. There was a waffle with caramel, nuts, and berries.
There you go.
I said, but that was $12, where the plain ones were $9. And I actually could feel myself thinking about it. If I wanted to go out tomorrow and spend $30 cash for a car, although I've heard it's hard even today.
Yeah, 30,000.
It's hard to find.
Yeah.
I've never bought a car on time, and I would pay $30,000. The reason why I have money like that is because I've denied myself most of my life. I mean, not deny. I've traveled a lot.
I understand. You've stripped and saved. Yeah, that's my point, though.
I grew up poor. My sister, on my mother's 70th birthday, we were all in a car driving somewhere. And my sister Rhonda said, well, when we were poor, and my mother said, oh, we were never poor, because of course we were never hungry. My grandmother actually owned one of those one-room grocery stores. But my sister said, well, then why didn't I have 5 outfits to wear to school to make it through a week? But being poor back then, you didn't. My poor grandson, if he couldn't have brand name clothes, it would have been awful. But it's amazing to have this money. I've been told 100 times that I can't outlive my money, but you don't know how. I I don't want to go in a nursing home. I want to be able to have someone come here. So how do you ensure that, you know?
No, I understand, but what's your advice to people that are in their 70s and 80s to loosen that grip a little bit and loosen that intensity and obsessive compulsiveness about every single penny? My mom, to this day, she'll go out to eat and order water. And I'm always saying, Mom, you can afford the drink. You literally can afford a Coke or a coffee. And she goes, but did you see what they're charging for? I'm like, I understand, but you can afford it. I think one of my passions, obviously I enjoy what I do because I sell contractual guarantees and I set people up for lifetime income and things that they need, long-term care, principal protection. But one of my passions is convincing my clients and listeners now that are podcast listeners and video viewers is to live your life. Live life today like you're dying tomorrow. That doesn't mean do crazy things with your money because you're not, but do some things that take you out of that comfort zone. Would you agree with that?
Well, this is why I want to do the annuity thing. This is why, and this might help. I always saved, whenever you get money, you live on what comes in and you save some, right? Mm-hmm. The only money I have now is what's saved, and of course, the Social Security. And I don't think of RMDs. You said on that list of things, your RMDs. I never think of RMDs as income because that's somebody forcing me to take my savings out.
It's a forced annuity, is what it is.
It is, but I don't like that idea. So part of why I'm going to force myself to do an annuity is it's going to feel like income. And my fantasy is, and I'll let you know after it starts. My fantasy is that it'll look like income, like Social Security, and it'll look like income and it'll be easier to spend. And I think the only thing to do with that, I thought, for me to give advice, other people would be saying to me, why don't you spend more? You have to do it inch by inch. I ordered the waffles with the caramel and nuts.
Good, that's good.
And during COVID,
did you feel guilty? Stop for a second. Did you feel guilty about that?
Well, I felt something or I wouldn't even thought about it.
Right.
But hey, I grew up when I first was old enough to go with a friend shopping when I lived in Philly, and we went to discount places like Loman's and Sim's. I remember being in a diner and not ordering the shrimp salad sandwich because it probably cost 35 cents instead of 25 cents or something like that. Yeah. But I think you have to just do it a little bit at a time and feel uncomfortable the first time. I still do. I took everybody out to dinner for my daughter's birthday, and my grandson has a girlfriend now. And when I got the bill, it wasn't I just almost fainted, but it's like the money is there.
You know, people are nodding their heads as they're listening to this. And I encourage them, part of the income floor strategy that we tell people to do is because if you have that money coming in, you don't have to worry about anything, and you don't have to think about it, and you just can go live your life. I think the Preparing for Death Support group is an external way for you to approach this, not only your own terms and your friends' terms, but I want people to listen to them. You don't have to start a Preparing for Death Support group, even though I think it would be a neat franchise opportunity. But you could think about that from the standpoint of your life. Because a lot of people, Peggy, and maybe you could speak to this because you've had such a dynamic life and so different. But people work, then they retire and they go into chapter 2, but they don't know what to do in chapter 2. Yes, you said you're going to be more busy in retirement than that's most cases. I hear that a lot, but a lot of people are still lost. Those A personality people are still lost out there. What's your advice to them? Because you're obviously an A personality, smart, high IQ. How did you handle that transition?
Well, in the very beginning, when I thought that I was going to now have time to write my books, like the thing I was really writing, I started traveling in the 70s. And because I'm outgoing and traveled alone, I would meet a lot of people. And if you were a woman from the United States traveling in Europe, and especially to strange countries like Morocco, men would notice you and come up and talk to you.
Sure.
And I think I have a really good intuitive sense. So a lot of times the things I did, other people would say that was crazy, but nothing bad ever happened. So my plan was to write for myself. I got involved in volunteer stuff. I was involved with Habitat for Humanity, not building houses, but they had scholarships for the schools. A generous person had done that. So I set up a whole program to help the kids get into schools and help families negotiate the whole system. And even today, I still do AARP tax aid counseling, where you can go to libraries and get free text. Just lately, and I swear that the group has helped me, because like I said, although they took me off course and made me end up planning my burial, and now I'm going to the other thing. So you think you know what you're going to think about when you have a group like that, but you don't know what you're going to think about. And what's happened now is I've spent so much more time now focused on my writing. So on my website, I put more stories about my mother. I had this really, really unusual, bizarre mother. 2 weeks before she died, she was a pool hustler, and she did
like playing pool.
Playing pool.
Nice.
She started before women went into bars by themselves. And of course, we're talking about working class. So we're talking about American Legion, VFW. And men that didn't know her would come in and they try to get her to, bet. And she wouldn't, but they'd want to. And of course, she'd always beat them. She did 5 balls in a row 2 weeks before she died. And
how old was she when she died?
She was only 83. Oh, that's my other thing. She died a month before her 83rd birthday. So that's another part of my preparations. I turned 78 last August, and that means that I'm 5 years away from when my mother died. Now, I'm healthier than my mother was because of my blood pressure and my heart, but you never know about cancer. My mother had both heart issues and cancer.
Okay.
So I've decided, well, I'm just going to pretend, because like you say, that ROI thing.
There's no ROI until you die. Right.
And this is what drives me crazy, because I'm a scientist.
Yes.
I mean, in the sense of not a biologist scientist, but a numbers, a statistics.
Yes, you are.
All the information that you need to decide about your money, you can't get. You just can't get it. You can't find out how old you're going to die, and you can't find out how healthy you're going to be before you die. Like one of the financial people said to me, "You've got all these 403Bs at these different schools. You should combine everything." Well, I can't, because of the way that the interest rate was set up. Right. But he kept warning me the time could come when you'd lose your brain and then you can't manage. But it's like, so you can't know when you're going to die. You won't know how healthy you are, and you won't know what's going to happen to the economy. It immobilizes people like me that analyze and base things on something. So it immobilizes me. But I've decided I'm not going through another December where I'm agonizing over that stupid RMD and what am I going to do. And so
I think that's one of the most refreshing answers I've ever heard. All of the information you need to make a good decision, you can't get. That's one of the best things I've ever heard. And everyone out there listening and viewing this, they're like, she's right. She's right. We don't, at the time of this taping, obviously we're going through, the back end of COVID, for people that are watching this 5 years from now. And, we're going through, invasions from countries into other countries. We're going through inflation. We're going through high gas prices. We're going through all kinds of things. We don't know how that's going to end up. None of it. We have no clue. So go ahead.
Well, going back to when you asked me, I said about the more writing. So, I don't know. You mentioned that I published a book. What happened was that a relative of mine talked me into doing my DNA 4 years ago. And there's no reason to think that I wasn't born to the people I was born to and had the background I did. Believe it or not, it turns out that the daddy who raised me was not my birth father, my biological father. And nobody knew. And people say, well, your mother had to know. And I say, no, my mother didn't have to know. They didn't have DNA back then. So
Right.
technically, reality is that my mother had no way of knowing. And so I was in my writing group. I put my travel stories aside and started to write My Surprise Family, Find Your Ancestry Story, because I was, of course, obsessed with trying to find out who he was. So the book was a mystery. It was a memoir, because how can you say, oh my God, I have a different father, I have different grandparents, without thinking of the ones you really have.
Right.
And then it's a manual, because I couldn't help but explain how to do it to other people. Now, my writing group said, oh, that's too technical, that's not interesting to us. So I put the manual part in the back of the book. And I don't know how much that's affected me, because the family that I found really was similar to the family I grew up in. And I went to one of their old reunions. They're from Pennsylvania, and you know, the Pennsylvania are Pennsylvania Dutch, which means they're Germans, because people thought Deutsch meant Dutch. And they could have been my relatives. And thank goodness the new biological father died. And what was really amazing is that he died about the same time my father died, when he was 65. My daddy died. My real dad died at 65. The biological father died, but he had a brother. And somehow when we met, we really connected, and he and his wife really were wonderful to me. And he said, I didn't look like James. The man's name is James. But after a while, both of them said, oh my God, she really reminds you of him. And it was wonderful, because I've always stood out. My family thought I was crazy. I'm very outgoing. Yeah. If I'm at an accident and I think the police are telling an injured person the wrong thing, I holler at the police. But it's gotten me into trouble in a lot of ways. But now I found out that he owned a collection agency. So he was articulate, aggressive. And I said, well, no wonder I wasn't afraid when I would do the things I did on trips. I was just like my father.
I love it. Your father ran a collections agency. Your mom, let's just go ahead and categorize her. She was a pool hustler. She played pool. And you got a doctorate from Wharton. That's America right there in a nutshell. And we're going to have this book that's called My Surprise Family, Find Your Ancestry Story. And it's by Margaret M. Nicholson, PhD, Peggy, as we know her, as you know her now. We'll have that link on the site. I would encourage you to pick that up, because she's a fantastic writer, and it's almost kind of a mystery. She writes it in a way that's a mystery, but it's factual. And then I was going to ask, as you were kind of explaining all of that, was it cathartic? Was it good to find all of that out, or was it painful, or was it both?
Yes, both. And the part that was good is there was never anything wrong with me. Like, I know now where my personality came from, because it did me well in some cases, but the combination of growing up with a mother that never disciplined, who allowed me to talk back, it made it really hard for me in jobs. And but of course, with the PhD from Wharton, it really opened doors. Should I tell them the story of why I trust you? Like you said, I'm not a client because of
I don't know. I mean, we have talked before, and
about the Wharton guy, Babble.
Yeah, David Babble. Now, David Babble, just to give people kind of insight, Wharton PhD, Wharton professor, very, very smart. And he was pro annuity as a category for people to look at it without a jaded view and look at them for what they do, which is transfer risk, provide lifetime income, etc. But he tragically passed away. So Peggy and I talk once or twice a year, just because we do. And I told her that he had passed away. David passed away, and she didn't know that. So you can take it from there.
Well, what happened is that years ago, Okay, I'll try to stay on topic. See, this is the reason I failed as a professor in colleges, because students that come and want you to stay on track, just tell them what they need for the test. I drove them crazy. There were few students who said, "Oh, this is the best teacher I ever had," the ones that came prepared. So, but
it's my job to keep you in your lane.
Good. Okay.
Lane.
Well, here's the thing, is that, of course, if you really do understand what transfer of risk means and what immediate annuities are, we're not talking about variable annuities.
No.
You just know that you need an annuity. That's why you have Social Security. That's why companies used to create the annuity for you. But when you teach in colleges, you can do this 403B. And now here you are, an ordinary person, and you're supposed to manage your own money, which is ridiculous. And so I called Stan because he was in the area and I wanted to try to do an annuity. And he mentioned this Babble person.
Sure.
And I had read, I think I might have even said, Babble's written a wonderful article about why annuities make sense and how to structure them. And because I do have a PhD from Wharton, you can use that doctor to open doors for you sometimes.
Yes,
even physicians, I'll say Dr. Nicholson because it gets you in. But I called him because his phone number was listed. I said, "This is, Margaret Nicholson. I studied under Russell Akoff." And that gave me a chance to talk to him. And I mentioned Stan. He said, "Oh yeah, I've talked to him. And he even told me about this one annuity I really didn't need." So that took away all my anxiety that about trusting Stan. And Stan I asked him about those new QLAC things. And because of my situation,
what did I tell you?
I'm single. I have one daughter, one grandson. It probably isn't appropriate, but
Correct.
I trust him that way. But the story that I was going to go off on about this thing with what why we're talking now, why I called you back. I'm trying, like I said, I'm trying to clean out my house. I did all that clothing. I have paperwork like crazy. So I got out all my financial stuff. And would you believe I've been throwing out inches and inches of stacks of paper where I've been pricing out annuities for the last 10 years of my life. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, Peggy, you've known this is the right thing to do. You haven't moved on it. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's good because now that you're 78, and in fact, I'm going to wait till I'm 79. Since nothing will make a difference between now and 79 because of the Tia Kreft thing.
Sure.
The older I am now, the more money, of course. But I'm thinking this is ridiculous. I spend more of my time agonizing over money than friends I have that don't have money that can just go out and enjoy themselves.
Well, I think a lot of people out there just nodded their head because money, and we know this, but you don't know this until you get money. So when you grow up poor and then all of a sudden you have money, money doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve anything at all. In fact, it makes it complicated if you let it make it complicated. And I think what you're saying is very poignant, which is don't let money complicate your life. Do some simple things to make your life very turnkey, for lack of a better phrase. And that can be done. This isn't some pitch for annuities because, at the end of the day, it either makes sense to you or it does not. One of the things we pride ourselves here is we're not high pressure. We have conversations, we have discussions, and we give you enough information and enough, the calculators and all that to make your own decision on your terms and your time frame. I was going to pivot though, because I want to make sure that I ask more questions that people are really interested in, because I know at this point they're like, man, is this lady fascinating?
The other thing I do want to say that I recognize, I know that I'm embarrassed. I don't want people to think when I say, "Oh, that woman was on there complaining that she has money," but people should remember that the reason I do have it. I remember dating a man once where I lived in an efficiency apartment, and he implied that something was wrong with me, that I'm in an efficiency instead of like a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom. But I really have deprived myself. The reason I have money is I didn't buy gold necklaces. I didn't eat out.
And why is that? Why did you was that a conscious decision? Was that from your childhood? Was that what I discussed earlier? Scars from the lower middle class, the disease of money. Where did that come
my
from?
sisters, I have two younger sisters and we're all different. Actually, I think I have two younger sisters that are my real sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're my half sisters. And I have three other siblings from that man. But anyway, it can't just be, it has to be part of your personality, because although they say every sibling grows up with different parents, I'm different. I'm stingy in a way. I mean,
Where did that come from though? Because I talk to people all the time. I had a conversation the other day with a gentleman. Very nice gentleman. He's had some health issues. We're talking about putting an immediate annuity in his portfolio for lifetime income, and we're structuring it joint life with his spouse so that it continues uninterrupted and unchanged for her life. But here's what he said. He said, you know what, Stan, I might just wait 2 more years and turn it on because it'll be more when I'm older. I'm like, I agree with that, but you have to factor in the payments that you missed for those 2 years while you're waiting to be, deprive yourself once again. I said, and I told him, I said, at what point in time are you going to stop depriving yourself?
That's what.
And what's the answer to that? How do people get across that bridge?
You're asking me. That's why I called you. But I'm going to do it. I think it has to do, for me anyway, like I said, there's a thing about when you get money, of course, you have to spend money to live. But then you save it. For me, once you get it in the bank, and speaking of dying, you know what? I took my children when they were 13 and 16 on a trip around Europe. Now, I had a boyfriend, Vladimir Vlahovic. He lived in Philly, but he was
dropping names. I love it. Go ahead.
He's passed away. That's why I'm saying his name.
That's fine. But great
name. He was from Serbia, from Yugoslavia. And so part of the trip around Europe, of course, we would go to Dubrovnik.
Sure.
And I had $4,000. I'm living in that efficiency. I have $4,000 in the bank because I sold a house after a divorce and I got the $4,000 and I had no job. And I'm deciding how much money to spend on that trip to Europe with my children. Now you have to remember how long ago that was. And we were going on a train. We had no hotel reservations. We would just be staying whatever cheap hotel we could find. And you know what? A close friend died while I was waiting to go. And I said, you know what? It doesn't matter how much of that $4,000 I spend because somebody, because of that. And I just went on the trip. I spent, and when I came home, I got a job and
So there was a moment that forced you to that. I'm going to put the book on the site where you can look at it, but I'm looking at it now on my screen. And when people go to my site and look at that, that's your mom and dad, and that's you standing in the middle, right there.
Right. For the people that can see, here's the book.
On the YouTube channel. So your mom looked like this tiny little demure, sweet lady, but she was a pool hustler. What you're telling me, the lady I'm looking at on that book cover would go into bars and hustle people for money.
She didn't hustle them for money. That she was just so good, and she wouldn't do it. It's people that would. She was playing in pool leagues all the time, and she was really good. So we call her a hustler. And the men that didn't know her thought, oh, they could beat a woman.
Did you keep a pool cue of hers? Please tell me you did, please.
Oh, yes. She had, that was one of the major things when she died, that everybody got a pool. Now there's a good example. She didn't probably have as much money as your mom, of course, but she was secure because my dad had worked on the railroad.
Sure.
And so she would, this is one of the stories that's on my website that my son wrote for a school paper, where she found out the Legion was going to start charging more money for a screwdriver. And so she was only going to drink beer there. And when she went to the VFW, it was 10 cents cheaper. But she spent $100 on a pool cue. She spent $100 on a pool cue.
And so when she left a will and left things, every one of you got pool cues?
We all got pool cues.
That's fantastic. And where's that? In your house, is that prominently displayed? I hope it is.
It's not displayed because I use it to shoot pool, so it's in a carry thing. But it skipped.
Wait a minute, stop. So you shoot pool too?
I try, but I'll tell you, it skipped a generation. Her grandchildren all play and are good at it, but somehow, you know, I would go when she got with her heart, when she couldn't, when she needed to stop driving, and I would drive her. And then I shot pool, but she would have to I could never learn to bank. Yeah. And she would have to put her finger on the edge of the table. Then I could aim the ball for that. But I have tried. Even here in St. Augustine, we have a pool hall. So my grandson and I shoot pool sometimes.
Got a question. If you're a retiree, you've been good at it, you're trying to get better at it. What I like about you, Peggy, is you're trying to be a better retiree. You're trying to teach yourself to be a better retiree. And I think there's validity to that. And that's the reason I wanted to have you on, because you have anybody who's part of a group called the Preparing for Death Support Group gets my attention, because you're an outside the box thinker, and you're pushing the limit on how to approach not only retirement, but our eventual death. As a friend of mine, Bill Black, says, life insurance guy, 1 out of 1 of us is going to die. And that's pretty good odds. But what mistakes, glaring mistakes, just in your travels and you speaking to your friends and people in your age range and life stage, what mistakes are people making that we haven't covered?
I think the thing that I started the group for, that you think there's going to be tomorrow, you're still waiting. You know how when you're young and you can't wait to be 13, and then you can't wait to graduate, that's what I could feel myself doing. That's what I didn't like. I thought, oh my God, I've married, divorced, I've had children, I've got my grandchild. It's like, why do I think the day is going to come when I'm ready? What does that mean? I mean, when my mother died, she still had this fantasy that someday she was going to have her whole house cleaned, fixed up, organized at one time. And that's what I could feel myself waiting. And like I say, I have these ideas. You know, I interviewed my grandmother when she was 80 years old, and now I transcribed it, and I'm getting the pictures and putting it into a book, and all these things. But I don't want to, I want that to be there that I'm working on, but I want to only enjoy today. You know, it's that stupid old-fashioned, it's not old, it's old, but mindfulness. There's this concept where, you know, speaking of one of us is going to die, we're only alive at the moment. We're alive now. We only have, I don't mean alive. We have this moment. We have memories from the past. Mm-hmm. We can think about the future, but we can only live right now, in this moment. And that's, I think it's important. And I think that that's what I'm trying to do, that I'm ready any moment to drop dead. I'm ready to either drop dead from a hemorrhage or get hit by a bus. I mean, I'm not. It would be kind of a mess to be embarrassed that somebody would come in here. I mean, doesn't it look nice back here? This help me get
the people that are viewing it on the YouTube, the people on the podcast channel, just let me explain.
Right, can't see.
It looks like she's in a library and her book's behind her. It looks great. It's very
right,
very nice.
But I want to stop waiting. And it's worked. The group has really. Do you know when the group went around that first night? And I'm thinking it's about living for today. They all said what their funeral plans either were or they didn't have any.
And that's not the point of the group. The point of the group is to live, not to die.
Well, but guess what? When they got to me, I said, I don't know. My daughter has said I should plan my funeral. I don't even know if I didn't know if I wanted to be cremated or buried. Well, I went with a group to see a natural cemetery in Gainesville. They just put you in the ground in a pine box, right, or a shroud. And so do you know what I did since then? I sent them a donation because you can't pay ahead for a place, but it reserves. I went to a funeral home, got the numbers for Sherry. I didn't prepay because who knows, I could be in one of those apartment buildings like Miami where you collapse, but it really made a difference because then I really had to believe I was dying. If I made a donation to a cemetery and I told my daughter, wrap me in a shroud, I don't want to be burned up, your soul, I don't even believe in souls, but it takes 40 days supposedly for your soul to get out of your body. And I think it helped me because I think it's making me face death and therefore making me say, today's my day.
Well, the great part about this podcast is it's being recorded and it's going to be living in forever as long as there's an internet and people.
Oh my God! I hope I'm not. I hope I don't hear something that I want you to edit out or something.
No, let me tell you something. People are going to be watching this for a long, long time to come, and I think that we've kind of caught lightning in a bottle here because your insights that you have woven into these stories that are just fantastic have been great. And I think what I'm going to walk away from this, number one, you're fantastic as everyone's hearing and nodding. But number two, the fact that, and you said something that I've been in the financial business for 3 decades plus. You said that there's no information out there to make that financial decision. There's not that all the information you need is not available because there's no way it can be available. I think if everyone can just put that in the back of their head, it would make them A, a better investor, B, live better, C, live for the day, and then prepare to live your life while you're here. Because people always ask me, is this a good time to buy an annuity? Is this the right timing? When should I buy? There's no good answer to that, just bad sales pitches, as I say. But it's just been fantastic. As I do with all of, I don't ever tell my guests that I'm going to do this until the very end, but with all of my celebrity guests, at the very end, and we're kind of there, I ask them for a mic drop moment, meaning that you've got the mic for 30 seconds to a minute. If you have one thing to say to this audience, which is huge and nationwide, what would you say, Peggy? What's your mic drop moment?
To really somehow believe, to know that no matter how old you are right now, it's easy for somebody my age, 78, to say, know that you're going to die. But I think for any age, to really recognize that you're not going anywhere. There's no place to go. You're here. You know, when my daddy died when he was 65, he was a really, really just normal man. He worked on the railroad. He was not very sophisticated socially. The family loved him. He was funny. He didn't volunteer. He was a 1950s father. And you know, his life was worth every minute. You don't have to do anything to deserve your life. You just are. And just to live, oh gosh, I hope I can listen to this again and really remember. And the other thing is to remember, and it's easy now with what's going on in the Ukraine. I used to use MASH to remind myself, no matter what you think your problems are, and of course some people could have very serious problems right now and illness and have gone through bad things. I've gone through, I used to have 2 children, so I've gone through a bad thing. But to remember that in general, you know, your life is really good. Life at the moment, if you're not going, and to enjoy it during that time and not let the little things drive you crazy. Like, I've got to finish I volunteered to do taxes. I've got to get that done. Do I get it done so I don't have to think about it? No, it's in my mind every night and then another night. So when we hang up from this, I'm going to take my own advice, finish the darn taxes.
There you go.
So don't let the little things ruin your life.
I think that is a great way to end it. And who you're listening to is a superstar that is going to, I think this will.
I am not a celebrity and I'm not a superstar.
You're getting ready to be one. And I really appreciate Peggy Nicholson Margaret Peggy Nicholson joining us. Again, I'll have everything on my site that you can contact her, buy her book, etc. And if you want to start your own preparing for death support group, she can guide you there. But I think that's a very unique way to go about reflecting on your life and preparing to live for the day. But I want to thank once again everybody that's listening to us on all the major podcast platforms and everyone that's viewing this on the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel. My name is Stan the Annuity Man, and you have been listening to Fun with Annuities, and I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to Fun with Annuities. Please hit the subscribe button and make sure to go to my site at theannuityman.com, where you can run your own SPIA, DIA, and QLAC quotes and see a live feed of the best MIGA fixed rates in the country, and even get indexed and income rider quotes as well. You can also sign up for my 6 Annuity Owner's Manual books, and I'll ship them for free and under no obligation. I also encourage you to schedule a one-on-one call with me, Stan the Annuity Man, so we can have a full discussion of your specific situation. It will be the best brutally factual and truthful advice you will ever get, and that's one guarantee you should definitely take advantage of. So join me next time for the #1 annuity podcast on the planet, Fun with Annuities.